Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Tennis Weekly with Joel, Kim, and Chris. On today's Talk Catch Up,
Gauff and Feast crowned Cincinnati champions.
Sinner pulls out of US Open with knee injury.
And Carlos Alcaraz will make his tennis return with Serena Williams.
Kim, Chris, today is the 24th of August, and we are here to catch up on the week in tennis at Tennis Weekly HQ. On today's episode, we are wrapping up on Cincinnati, looking ahead to the US Open and talking about literally every single story that has happened in the last 7 days in tennis, which is quite frankly a lot. We've had Jannik Sinner pulling out of the US Open. Carlos Alcaraz is in. He has signed up to play mixed doubles with Serena Williams. We've also had Nick Kyrgios test positive for cocaine. The Cincinnati tournament has also happened. Coco Gauff and Arthur Fils are champions. I'm losing my breath, guys. Winston-Salem and Monterey are also on this week, and we have got the US Open draw to look forward to. I mean, it is fan week as well as Winston-Salem and Monterey on the tours. So, yeah, there is just so much to talk about. Djokovic has released a documentary as well. I genuinely can't think of a week in tennis where I was sort of going into it thinking, what are we going to talk about in the podcast? And in 7 days' time, we have got so many news stories.
What are we not going to be talking about is the question.
Well, Kim, we're not going to be talking about Ollie Tarvit.
Well, we are, because you've just mentioned him.
Oh, no.
Ollie Tarvit mentioned.
I've lost the game.
Yeah, well, he's still lingering sort of in the M25 vicinity, but he was at a challenger level event. He got a wildcard into the Roehampton Challenger, went on and won it. Biggest title of his career. So I'm chuffed. I'm sure some of our British listeners are as well.
Is that how you holiday?
Were you actually on holiday? Were you on holiday to the Roehampton
in
Challenger?
Roehampton? No, that would be slightly underwhelming, I think, for a holiday. I was in Bonn in Germany, actually. So quite different, but very nice place indeed.
Was everything Bonn?
Oh,
had to get in there.
It was, Joel. Wrong language there, though.
Oh, no.
Where is Bonn, Joel?
Sehr good.
Not gonna lie, listeners, I thought Bonn was in Switzerland.
I think you might be thinking of Bern.
Yeah.
I think you're getting them mixed up.
What is notable about Bonn?
It was the former capital of West Germany when the country was
birthplace
split.
of Haribo, I believe.
Birthplace of Ludwig van Beethoven, which is the main reason for my visit.
We did different things when I was back in. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, I did also eat a bit
highbrow,
of
lowbrow.
But whilst I was away, I saw some Tennis Weekly content coming up on my social media. You were running a few polls, some exciting news on the way, perhaps.
Well, I did see you voted in the polls, which
we both voted.
It does throw off the numbers slightly from what I was trying to achieve. But what we did ascertain for all of this is that there is some interest in an ad-free version of the pod. So ahead of the US Open, it can get a bit ad heavy with so many episodes. So we're looking at a paid for service that we'll be launching. And we'll also have some bonus episodes. So stay tuned for that. There'll be more details when we get to the draw preview. But Kim, it was nice to know that you would be, what was it, the quote? I might try it, is what you said, Kim. And you're one of the hosts. So hopefully you will try it.
I'm sure I will. But I wanted to put myself in the shoes of, someone who I listen to a lot of other podcasts. So I thought, well, if that was me, so
would I subscribe to my own?
But I'm not going to ask what Joel voted for. Let's get into the news, shall we? I mean, what do we tackle first? There is so much to talk about. I think possibly the news that Jannik Sinner has withdrawn from the US Open is quite a big news item. He is out. It's the first Grand Slam he's actually missing since the 2019 US Open. So it's been, 7 years? So very consistent normally from him. But yeah, he's got a right knee injury and it's not going to be ready in time for him to be at Flushing Meadows. So yeah, Alcaraz is back, but Sinner's out. We're not going to get them both at the same slam. Again, it's almost the complete opposite to 2025 season. But yeah, what was your initial reaction when this news broke? Joel, I'm coming to you first.
Yeah, I was very shocked. I mean, if you had told me a month ago that Carlos Alcaraz was going to be in and Jannik Sinner was out of the final major of the year, I would have been laughing. I just don't think it would have been true. Having said that, though, the more this kind of story has gone on with his knee, and the stories that we've been hearing, the uncertainty has grown. I think it's not ideal. I think, we would have loved to have had Alcaraz and Sinner in the draw. I think we know that tennis is healthier when they're both fit and ready. So it's a bit of a shame, I think, that one is back, one is not there. We want them here at the same time.
Yeah, and I mean, it does mean Zverev is the top seed. And I do wonder if it's, again, a good chance for him to pick up a slam like he did at Roland Garros. And, he's been pretty consistent over the last couple of slams. So could be a very good chance for him. But it could also be a good chance for a certain Novak Djokovic. Chris, is this his best chance to win that, long-awaited Slam 25?
Well, it's looking as good as it could. We've talked about some of the other slams earlier this year as being the biggest opportunity that we think he's going to get, at the twilight of his career. I don't think he's going to get a better opportunity than, Alcaraz having not played a warm-up tournament. I mean, playing with Serena Williams probably doesn't necessarily count, the mixed doubles. I'm not sure that's kind of going as hard as he possibly can. I'm not sure that's the warm-up he would have thought he would be having. I think this means that Djokovic, if he can get a good draw, if he's in the semi-finals, I'm not sure Carlos Alcaraz or Jannik Sinner is going to be there for him to play. So that was what we've been talking about all year. He can't beat them both in the same tournament. He can beat one of them, and he might not have to beat any of them potentially. So that is quite a turnaround when you think about where we were at the end of Australia, thinking there's no way if they're both playing, he can win it. And then we thought how fortuitous that, Alcaraz missed a couple of them, Djokovic would have a chance. I think with the Sinner news, I'm more just shocked that a physical injury has prevented him from playing, because it didn't feel like that's where his season was going. It felt like he was ramping up again, to be much more dominant at the slams. It's strange to think he'd only have won one Grand Slam as such a dominant start to the year, but I guess it just shows that you've got to think about longevity, and someone who knows all about that, is Novak Djokovic, that you can't play every tournament and still be able to peak, perform, and not get injured. So I mean, it's anyone's to play for. Joel, you have been saying the entire year an Australian could win. An American. An American. Which Australian? Yes. Not Nick Kyrgios.
An Australian could do it.
Cruz Hewitt's going to win it. No, an American could win this year.
Yeah, I actually wonder if there's an even bigger chance for an American male Grand Slam champion. We haven't had one in so long. Andy Roddick, I think in the early 2000s. I want to say 2003, but don't quote me on that.
Correct.
So, yeah, I think there's a big chance that we could see an American champion. We could see a first-time champion. I mean, Ben Shelton winning in Canada. We've had Francis Tiafoe in the final in Cincinnati. Add in Taylor Fritz as well, who's got a pretty good US Open and Grand Slam record. So, I think there's big opportunities for the Americans, along with Zverev and Djokovic. But I do think, for me, this is, I actually think Zverev as the top seed, he's going to be on the other side to Alcaraz. He's got a good record against Alcaraz as well. If that matchup does happen, further in the tournament, I think he's got a very good opportunity, but his form's not been there recently. So yeah, it's very, very open.
At least he's played some tennis matches, Joel. I think Alcaraz, we've got to talk about it. Did we think he was going to play? I was almost begging his team not to let him play, because with wrist injuries, you just get so concerned by it. But can he pick up where he left off is the question that I have.
I mean, he's defending champion, and I'm kind of wondering, can we just insert him into the favourites conversation already, just kind of coming back from injury? I think for me, without Sinner, I actually think he can win this tournament not being 100% healthy. Yeah. I think he could win this at 70 to 80%, even arguably at a canter, given his talent levels and a lot of the players around him not in the greatest of form. So yeah, I think he's in the mix, but it's one of those where I think he will want a favourable draw so he can get those matches under his belt to build some momentum from scratch, because he's not getting it, I don't think, in the US Open mixed doubles.
No warm-up tournament either, right, Kim?
But he's warming up with Serena, because they have entered the mixed doubles. So, I mean, I'm so curious to see how that is going to turn out.
Do you think he should have played Winston-Salem instead of the? I know. I'm sure this was.
Was it a choice? Serena Williams or Winston-Salem?
I know, but like, I'm sure this was in the works for a long, long time, and it's it's just been revealed. But do you think we saw? I think Świątek has pulled out of the mixed doubles because of the workload that's been on her plate in Canada and Cincinnati. Do you think there could have been a conversation that Alcaraz? I know it's Serena Williams, but could and should he have played Winston-Salem if had the opportunity?
I mean, he really didn't take it seriously last year, the mixed doubles with Emma. That was just a bit of fun on the court, to be honest. It has been rumoured for a while, though. I had heard that Serena and Carlos were a potential pair. Also heard it was going to be Venus and Sinner if he was playing, was what it would have been. Really blockbuster. I'm sure there was a lot of appearance fees on the line there, that's for sure.
6 Kings Slam, eat your heart out.
I know, like how many Grand Slams on a tennis court? But I would say it's unusual that someone is able to kind of enter a tournament without a warm-up tournament and win it. Sinner did it, obviously, at Wimbledon this year. We are seeing it more frequently because actually having a break can sometimes make you fresher. The nature of this injury makes me concerned that you'd want to test it a bit more. I'm sure he's testing it off the court, but it's not the same as competition, and it's not the same as 5-set matches. So I would have played a warm-up tournament, but I think he missed the boat to play Cincinnati probably in his recovery, and then he didn't want to play or risk it playing, full-on tennis at Winston-Salem. So I think he's made a decision that is the best for his recovery and wanted to play the US Open, and this is the only way he could do it.
I mean, maybe we'll see a eve of the tournament, withdrawal. I mean, obviously, I hope that doesn't happen, but you never know.
Stranger things have happened, Kim.
It may fling the draw wide open. But let's have a look back at what has happened in Cincinnati, because it did finish yesterday. We've got 2 champions, Coco Gauff and Arthur Fils. So let's start with the women, where we had Coco Gauff having a fantastic time in Cincinnati, picking up the tournament win again. She won it back in 2023 before she went on to win the US Open. So will history repeat itself again 3 years later? She beat JPEG in straight sets in the final, 6-2, 6-4. Actually, the first All-American women's final since 1970 in Cincinnati, which is somewhat surprising, perhaps. But Gauff peaking back in form when it matters the most. Is this holding her in good stead for Flushing Meadows now that we're a week away now? Chris, how impressed were you with Coco throughout the week?
Well, Kim, I have to say you're the only member of the podcast who didn't predict she was going to win this title.
I know. I went for
we had a feeling, didn't we?
I don't know why we had such a feeling that something was brewing for Coco. It really did feel like that. You did go for the repeat, which I do understand. They are the form players. It did feel like they were going to do really well. And obviously, Iga did have a good run. But for Gauff, it just felt like everything switched into gear for her. I feel like her game is getting back on track. The forehand is actually improved. I really do think that. I think she's doing some damage with it. I think she's handling the pace much better. When Pegula was kind of really hitting a hard and flat ball at her, I think she put some work on it and actually returned it with a bit of interest, which isn't something we normally say for the Coco Gauff forehand. So the serve is looking much better. I think the forehand's looking better. It did get a bit dicey at the end. She was very far ahead, especially in that second set after winning the first set. Pegula's hard to put away, but for Gauff, she's got to be feeling great about her game because it had been a long time since she's won a title. I couldn't believe the last one she won was actually Beijing last year. And that was 1,000. It's been nothing like that since, really, apart from a few kind of peaks at Wimbledon, for example. So, I mean, I think it's a very big win. I think it's a confidence win. And I think given the fact that it's so wide open and, Sabalenka has no confidence, defending champion, I think Gauff will be thinking, this could be my time again.
She is one of those players that can have an off season, but then just put it all together for 1 or 2 tournaments and go all the way. I definitely have the confidence that she can just switch it around like that. And yeah, this is what she proved this week. And like you said, Sabalenka failing to kind of be the world #1 in terms of how she is in these matches of late. She lost in Cincinnati to Sara Bejlek in straight sets, which is not something we thought would be happening. I mean, Sabalenka, this was in the 4th round, didn't even reach the quarterfinals here. So not great preparation for defending your title. What did you make of the Bejlek match? Because this is Bejlek's, arguably her biggest win, her top win over her first win over a world number one. We saw her earlier in the season kind of come onto the scene, have some great wins, but yeah, getting the win over Sabalenka here. What did you make of that one, Joel?
I mean, the manner of her defeats, I think, has meant a lot of fans have been raising eyebrows, certainly over the last few months. And I think you just got to add this as another one to the list. She was in very dominant positions against Bejlek, 5-1 up in the tiebreak. We know Sabalenka's record in tiebreaks. We didn't think she was going to lose that. And then in the second set as well, she was 4-1 up. So, to lose from these positions, I think is very concerning for Sabalenka. We associate her with a very dominant player who doesn't really let these positions up, but it's been a worrying trend this season. And I think another interesting thing, if you look at the defeats that she has had this season, she's losing to lots of different types of players. She's losing to aggressive players who play similar brand of tennis to her, like Osaka and Rybakina. But Bejlek is not necessarily in that category. She's a bit smaller, runs around the court. She plays with a lot of top spin. So as well as the manner of the defeats, I think, and how they're coming from positions of when she's up in the matches, I think the play styles as well is really worrying for her, and it does not set her well up for her defense of the US Open.
Is she one of the favorites still? I know it seems crazy to think that she wouldn't be. At the moment, I think you'd say that Rybakina, Pegula, Gauff, and Swiatek, probably are the front runners right now. But I mean, she is the world number one. She has won it. I mean, this is not even just a one-time defending champion going into this. I mean, she's been dominant in the US, especially in New York. But it just feels like mentally, it's not necessarily about the form. It's a switch has gone for her, and she needs to quickly address that because it's not getting better. It's actually getting a bit worse in terms of some of the rounds that she's falling to and the rankings of the opponents that she's losing to. And it makes you think, is it what we talked about, that all of these losses are really kind of adding up? Because it's got to be mental, because the game is so good. But what can she do you think? I mean, Kim, is there something that you think that she's missing, or do you think it's just going to suddenly she can play herself into form?
Well, I was going to have a bit of a jokey response and say she needs a bit of Red Bull, like Amanda Anisimova was swigging during her match.
Some wings.
Yeah, and Joel, I think you thought she was downing a beer because it does look a bit beer-like. But
yeah, on that, Chris, I think she needs to lose the world number one ranking. I think that will take I think that might help take the edge off. I think we've seen that particularly with Swiatek, how kind of going down the rankings a little bit, is now kind of coming back up. I wonder if that will take the pressure off. I mean, for me at the moment, I actually think Coco Gauff is playing like the world number one player at the moment. I think that since Wimbledon, I always, that was an incredible match against Mukova in the semi-finals. She arguably should have got to the final, and I was wondering, how is she going to bounce back from such a big defeat? And she's actually kind of continued the momentum on. And I think, earlier in the season, I was all singing praises of her defense and how she could win matches, not necessarily playing the best tennis. But I think as well as that, she can now play more front foot aggressive tennis. She's spoken about with her serve how she's going for it more. It's not necessarily landing in all the time. Percentage could have been higher against Pegula, but when it is, it's working really, really well for her. So I actually think Coco Gauff is playing like the world number one at the moment. And if Sabalenka, I think Sabalenka just needs some time out. She's been like consecutive world number one for nearly 100 weeks now. I think it's fair enough to see a dip at some point, but I think losing the ranking could potentially help her.
The wheels were coming off, in fairness. Even kind of last year, only winning one slam, the trajectory was not necessarily that she was ramping things up to being even more dominant. She was the most consistent. So I think with Coco, you're right. I think we forget the Wimbledon semi-final, the tennis she played on the way to making that round was fantastic. Then a semi-final, and then now a title. So yeah, she's making it very, very deep and consistently deep at these tournaments.
I think with Sabalenka, it's interesting you say that. It's that we sort of see her as a dominant player, but actually she's sort of been consistent, I'd say, over the last 6 months. And, she's getting there or thereabouts in terms of the latter rounds. Maybe this Bejlek result aside, but it's not what we were expecting, I think, from the end of last season.
A season's not defined by doing the sunshine double, is it? It's about how many slams you win. So having said this, I'm sure she's going to go and win it again, let's be honest. But I think you're right. It's wide open. And as we say, if Amanda Nisimova, if she gets a Red Bull, she can actually maybe beat anyone on her day. Maybe she's going to be the favourite.
I am slightly concerned because this was picked up by a lot of news outlets, and they thought she was actually swigging a beer. And I can understand why from the visuals, because it does sort of look like a beer.
It looks quite gassy.
It's a beer cup, isn't it? It's got froth on it.
As a Red Bull drinker, I instantly knew it was an energy drink.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
What was it that gave it away? The non-natural colouring?
It was the bubbles inside the liquid. But yes.
And so, do you find it works for you when you're performing on the tennis court, Joel?
It helps me for those late nights we have for the US Open.
Yeah,
for sure. But
you're more of a Jägerbomb kind of man, right?
I did enjoy that. I think she had it in like it was like at the start, I think, of the third set against Iala, and it did the trick. She needed something to dispatch Iala, but she needed that little extra secret sauce.
Well, I have to say, well done to both of you, because you did get the champion right. And I think, Chris, probably overall, you did the best out of all of us on our predictions. You had 3 of 4 semi-finalists. So well done for Cincinnati.
Thanks, Kim. I'm going to say, don't look too much detail, because the men's is the complete opposite, I think.
Yeah. I think the men's on the other side is, a complete shocker. I had one quarterfinal completely correct with Fritz and Nakashima, but apart from that, we didn't really have a great showing. And,
I only got Fritz, was the only person I got. 1 of 8. It's probably the worst we've done.
I will say I did have Fils and Tiafoe, but I wasn't convinced either of them would get into the final.
That's a pretty good shout, because he did just have a minor operation, so that was quite punchy at the time. So Joel, you might be our top performer this week.
No, well, but the thing is, Chris, I know you've been really advocating for Arthur Fils this year. So I think his win in Cincinnati, his very first Masters 1000, this is a really nice news story, because he's been through the ringer a bit over the last year with that back injuries. He's not even played like the slams this year, apart from Wimbledon. So it's been a difficult period for him, but to kind of turn things around and get this title really means a lot to him. And you can't help but feel good for him. But it was a very strange scoreline. 6-3, 1-6, love over TFO. And it wasn't even like an hour and a half long. It was a short match, but an interesting scoreline.
Worlds away from that Djokovic Alcaraz final we had a few years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah. What did you make of this, though? I mean, a deserved winner, Fils, but obviously dominant in that final set. But I guess when it comes to winning your first Masters, it's like you don't really care how you do it. You just want to get over that finish line, and that's what he did. But Chris, what was your take on Fis's week in Cincy?
Well, first, as you say, I'm big fan of his game. Such a big tennis player when it comes to the points and how he constructs them. I was blown away when we saw him like years ago now. I just thought he's got such a complete game. He hits the ball so hard, and it would be about his mindset would be the thing that he needs to try and address, because I think sometimes the discipline is lacking from some of the younger players that don't quite get the best out of their game because they maybe don't make the best shot choices. They might be a bit too emotional. I think you can be all of that, but I think sometimes he has been a bit too much on the emotional, and that's probably what led to that back injury when he should have retired against Jaume Munar, and he kept playing because of his passion, excitement to be there and playing in front of his crowd, and then it completely derailed, his career for a while. Actually, I mean, you say that he missed Australian Open, he missed the French Open, he did win Barcelona, kind of in between those. But it's kind of crazy to me that he's now ranked, almost in the top 10, and he's only played two Grand Slam matches. He's won one and he's lost one, and that was at Wimbledon. And it just kind of makes you think about the state of the ATP. Not to take away from this result because it is huge, but the run that he had to make it to the final, these Masters runs are not necessarily the Masters runs that we've seen previously. So I do think it's a big win. I am missing some of those blockbuster encounters we've got so used to at this level. I don't think I was necessarily expecting some of the semi-finalists, but I think it's a historic final, but I'm not sure it's necessarily one that's going to be remembered for the quality of the tennis in every set.
No, it's a sort of last man standing almost in the nicest possible way. And I mean, in previous years, we've seen the winner of Cincinnati go on to win the US Open. So Novak did that in 2023, Sinner in 2024, Alcaraz in 2025. Are we kind of a lot less confident that, the Feast is going to suddenly go and do that since the US Open double? It may not be such a reliable guide this year, but
I certainly think he's going to be a dark horse for the tournament. I was looking at his Grand Slam record, actually. He's only got one round 4, week 2 appearance at Grand Slams to date. So this could be a big moment for him. The only thing I would just also add as a British fan, as a Jack Draper fan, I think looking at how he spent, I think, it was at 8 months, I think, on the shelf after injury, coming back and getting back to this level where he's knocking on the door of the top 10, I think that can give Jack Draper a bit of confidence in terms of it, like it can be done. We've seen how, overwhelmed he got in that kind of situation, earlier on in Canada. But I think, I've been so impressed with the consistency that Feast has come back with, because although he's not been able to necessarily do it at the Grand Slams he's been in so far, he has been able to do it there or thereabouts at Masters events, getting to the business end. So I think, from that point of view, it's been impressive to see how he's come back from injury, and we're almost talking about it as a non-factor.
Yeah, and he is, like Chris said, he is at 11 in the world now. He doesn't have points to defend at the US Open this year, so you would expect going to be in the top 10 after the event. And great for French tennis. I mean, he is the first Masters 1000 winner from France since Tsonga did it back in 2014 in Canada. So
French number 1,
coming.
that is over now. Whatever we used to like to
discuss
enjoy.
it anymore.
No, it's never over. Manarino's playing with
Poor
Salem this week.
But I mean, let's talk about Djokovic as well, because we were expecting he came back in Cincinnati, opening match against Tirante of Argentina, and Djokovic lost in 3 sets, 2-6, 6-4, 6-4, really struggling in the the heat and the humidity, and he said that he is having a health issue going on. So again, if the US Open is similar conditions, how is he gonna be faring there? It's something that he said has been bothering him for the last couple of years. So
but this was a surprise, wasn't it? Because we did a whole section of the podcast about this is the best he says he's ever felt physically. And then he reveals suddenly that he has a health condition that he's been dealing with for the last couple of years that's been bothering him. That's quite at odds to what he was saying just before the tournament, that physically he'd been the best. So maybe that makes either his achievements this year and last year even more impressive, or he basically said something that was completely misleading prior to the tournament starting, that he just felt like maybe he'd got better. I don't know. It was quite confusing, but he was really struggling out there, wasn't he, Joel?
Yeah, he was. And perhaps, to me, it perhaps gives a bit more added intrigue around. I feel like he's at a point in his career where all he cares really about is Grand Slams, and perhaps he's not in the best shape going into Masters events like he was previously, because he's not as motivated by them. I mean, his record in Masters recently has not been the greatest, certainly not up to his high standards. But I do think they serve a purpose. I do think they would have helped him acclimatize, I think, to the the matches in that sort of those conditions for New York. So yeah, I don't think it's great to see, but I think he will be buoyed on, I think, by the fact that he knows that Sinner won't be there. It will just be a case of, I think, can he make the most of it? Because his form at the moment, I mean, even though he took that first set 6-2, felt like he was blowing. It did not feel like a comfortable situation he was in.
I mean, his documentary has just been released, hasn't it? On last Thursday, The Wolf in Winter on Amazon Prime.
Have you finished
released in the summer?
I have not started watching it yet. I am, behind on that one, but I might put it on this week pre-US Open as part of my build-up.
A bit of an amuse-bouche.
Yes. But well done to Arthur Fils, because he came away with the title, and kudos to him, and TFO as well. Great performance to get to the final. Again, like getting into good form before his home slam. Will it be the first year in over 20 years that an American wins their home slam?
Is it the summer of Nakashima as well? Because I know
Nakashima
TFO got to the final.
Shelton,
semi-finals. All that hype on Shelton. He went out in his first match to I can't remember now. He went out in his first match.
Was it?
Was it Faria? Yeah. And then Nakashima seems to be the one who's been the most consistent of them.
Nakashima, Grand Slam titleist. How do you like the sound of that?
Oh,
people are going to pay attention after the Noskova prophecy. The Nosk prof.
Oh, is it the Nakashima prophecy?
Is it? Well, are you committing to it?
Would you still put Shelton at the top in terms of kind of men's chances of Fritz? Fritz not really done that much.
I'm not 100% convinced by any of them. Like in terms of consistency.
Okay, so it's Lerner Chien, is it?
Plus home pressure. I don't know. Maybe it's just the Sasha Zverev, or
he's not an American.
No, I know, but I'm just thinking who, like, realistically, or could Daniel Medvedev come back?
Also not American.
Claim his title. I know.
I think TFO of the Americans.
I'm just counting out all the Americans.
I think he plays really well in the US Open.
He does,
and I think if he can keep this going and not kind of panic in some of those situations we've seen him before. Sometimes he gets kind of very,
winning it is another kettle of fish.
It's hard getting over the line, right?
And he did. The reason for that third set as well, I think he did have a hip issue.
Right.
The medical timeout. So
I saw the timeout. I wasn't sure how serious it was because he kept playing, but I guess we're saying American could win, but we can't name an American who we think will win.
No. On that note, let's take a quick break, but do join us in the second half, where we'll be discussing Nick Kyrgios' suspension from the tour following a positive cocaine test, the formation of a Grand Slam Player Advisory Council, and we'll be asking whether Stan Wawrinka was hard done by for not receiving a US Open wildcard. So do not go anywhere. Welcome back to the Tennis Weekly podcast, and let's kick off the second half, as always, with a game. Joel, it's a par for the court, so over to you.
Have you missed it, Kim?
Is this? I have been missing it. I haven't been on the last two pods, and I've been missing my.
You've been in Roehampton all that time.
Yeah, is it going to be about British Challenger winners? Maybe.
Oh, that's
the Roehampton qualifying.
That's not a bad shout, Kim. That's not a bad shout, but maybe for another time. A kind of continued theme for the games. There has been a little clue dropped in the first half for what this path for the courts will be. And I will say now, this is for you two to work together, because I think it's quite a tricky one. So
fantastic.
I think two heads are better than one. Okay. My category for you both is Novak Djokovic first match losses at Masters 1000 events since 2020, and there are 6 in total.
First
match, yeah. So you might have got by
like second round, more like yeah. In reality, yeah,
okay. First match at Masters.
This is
1000
the meanest one you've ever done.
God. I mean, I've got one name.
there are actually he's actually lost in the opening match.
This feels a bit negative, doesn't it?
Sorry.
I just thought
it was quite interesting. He's lost 19 times in the opening match of Masters 1000 events in his career. But I'm just whittling it down to past 2020. I will give you the events to make it a little bit easier for you. So I'm looking for 2022 Monte Carlo, 2025 Indian Wells.
But you're going to give us 19 events?
No, just six events. Just 6 events. Yeah, since 2020. 2025 Monte Carlo, 2025 Madrid, and then 2026 Rome and 2026 Cincinnati. So there are 6 opponents that have defeated.
They're 2 Monte Carlos, 2022 and 2025.
Correct.
I think so.
Right.
Yes. Okay. And you are playing together. It is a tough one. And I'm going to set par at 50%. I'm going to go 3 out of 6.
Well, we've got one, haven't we, Chris? Tirante.
I would go with that first.
From last week. Tirante, please, Joel.
That is correct. Very good. Yes. Tirante is on the list. 2026 Cincinnati.
So who did he lose to in Rome?
Is there a Czech player somewhere?
I
think, did he lose to Yuri Vesely at one of these? Because I think Vesely has beaten him at some point in his career.
That feels like the sort of answer, Kim, that you give a bit too early on. I can't give you that yet.
Oh, okay.
Didn't he lose to like someone like Navone or something? And like, was that the first? But was that the first match that he lost though? This is not easy.
That's the thing. He could have lost in the 3rd round to similar players.
The only one I can definitely remember. I think he lost it to Bilo in Monte Carlo.
Yeah, I think you're
right.
right.
I think that was last year.
Yeah. To Bilo?
So I think.
Yeah, let's go for him.
That is correct. Very good. Tabilo is on the list.
Chris.
So it is tough, but you're also only 1 away.
Oh, really?
From reaching par for the
This is just me trying to get her to avoid saying
very low pass day.
A Czech player. I also think I've thought of another one based on that match. I think he lost. Did he lose at the Madrid first round or his first match in Madrid that year as well?
2025 Madrid, yeah.
I think he lost to Arnaldi.
Oh, okay. I don't remember that, but
I don't think he won a set against him either.
Arnaldi?
Happy to go for that.
I just really feel strongly that happened.
Yeah, because the Vesely match might have been like late.
What is this Vesely? I don't remember this.
I don't know. I just know he's lost to Vesely at one point.
Okay, well, that can be our final answer.
So are you going to go with Arnaldi or are you going to go with Vesely?
Oh, let's go with Arnaldi.
Arnaldi.
Trust Chris.
Arnaldi is correct. Very good. Very good.
You did a real Simon Cowell result there, didn't you?
You have reached par for the courts. 3 out of 6.
Wow.
So there are 3 other answers.
Which ones are they for again?
I will say very quickly, Yuri Vesely is a correct answer.
Yes.
But it happened in 2016.
Kim. What year are you living in?
It did happen on the clay, though.
10 years ago.
And Kim, it was in Monte Carlo, one of your favourite events. Maybe that's why you
Is that what you're remembering?
So...
Yes. Isn't that odd?
Yes. But
the way that your brain works needs to be studied.
He is not one of the 6.
So which other tournaments are there, Kim, on that list?
2022 Monte Carlo, 2025 Indian Wells, and 2026 Rome.
Right.
They are not easy answers. Fognini is not on the list.
No. I think he lost to
Benchik.
I think he lost to Botic van der Zandschulp in Indian Wells because he beat Nadal and Djokovic within like 6 months.
That is correct. Very good. Yes. Van der Zandschulp is on the list.
I've got nothing else. Should we guess who was playing in 2020? Was it not the Dan Evans year, was it?
Oh.
Where he lost to Dan Evans in...
Oh, that was at Monte Carlo.
Kim, I'll give you a little clue.
2022 Monte Carlo, Dan Evans.
It was a Spaniard.
Albert Ramos.
Who played very well in Monte Carlo. Maybe even that year. Can't remember. Alejandro Davidovich Fokina.
So Dan Evans, was that the year before then?
It might well have been.
It's not part of our 6, okay.
But it's not part of our 6, no. The final answer
was this
2026 Rome, yeah. probably the toughest name on the board. Listeners, I'll be impressed.
Do you have any other Czechs up your sleeve?
If you get this.
Is it someone that you know, Joel, that plays?
It's a tough one. It's a tough one. Not really. Probably the biggest thing he's done in his career to date. He's 21
Patrick
years
Kypson,
old. Bit of an up-and-coming player. He's
Learnatine?
Croatian.
Oh,
Dino. Is it good old Dino Prismic?
Dino Prismic. Yes.
Again, I really don't have a memory of that. But we definitely talked about it.
So
we remember
lot
2016. We remember
Yes.
nothing from Rome this year.
Yes. Yeah. Those are your 6. So Fakina, Van der
That's
Zandschulp,
over a decade ago.
Tabio,
Oh.
Arnaldi, Prismic, and Tirante.
That was hideous, Joel.
Thanks,
I know.
Joel.
Yeah.
Just be glad I
Listeners,
didn't
how
ask
did
for the
you get
full
on with that?
19.
We'd be here all night.
I'm still
Be a separate
shocked.
podcast.
Yeah, Navone wasn't on it. Who did he lose an Argentinian somewhere? I can't remember. I'll have to look it up afterwards.
Tirante, yeah, last week.
Oh, true.
Okay. Well, thanks, Joel. Let's move on to the mailbag now because we have a mailbag question from Veronica on Instagram who has said she was very much looking forward to the US Open, but it's really put a dampener on it that former champion Stan Wawrinka wasn't given a wild card in his final year on the tour. Every other Grand Slam has given Stan a wild card, even Wimbledon, which is the one slam that he never actually won. What was the US Open thinking, giving the last wild card not to Stan Wawrinka, but to Patrick Kypson, who is a 26-year-old American who has not in the nicest possible way done an awful lot in his career. Thank you, Veronica, for your question. Joel, thoughts coming to you first. Is this a travesty from the USTA?
That seems like quite a biased question, Kim.
Sorry, that's a very leading.
What do you think about this?
The Patrick Kypson hate is real.
Yeah.
No.
Are you appalled
I'm
by
so
this
sorry, Patrick.
low-ranked Patrick?
I think this is a massive own goal from the USTA. Stan Wawrinka deserved to be in the US Open main draw. I think he deserved it on his performances this year, particularly at Grand Slams. He had a fantastic match at Wimbledon against Matteo Berrettini, one of my favourite matches of the tournament. He had a good run as well at the Australian Open. To me, it's not like this would have been a waste of a wild card. And to think also that this is his final year. This is the final Grand Slam of the year. To rob him of that opportunity, a great of the game, to rob him of that moment, to have one final bow at Grand Slams. He's such a popular figure as well. You know, he would have filled out, whatever court he would have been on at the US Open as well. I think it would have been a very fitting end for him, a place where he's had great memories, great success. I think this hurts. For Stan himself, I think I saw in Instagram stories as well. He was actually in New York on one of his stories, I think on his laptop, and it was sort of a bit sad. I think the fact that he was requested one and he didn't get it. Yeah, I think it's a bit of an own goal from the tournament, and I don't really understand the reasoning for it. I think he was denied one last year as well. I don't know if he requested that, but yeah, for this year, I'm very shocked.
Is it a bit of an own goal on his behalf, though, not to enter qualifying, or was it just that he, if it was a wild card, it wasn't going to be anything else? He was wanting to kind of go out on his terms and not struggle through qualifying.
I don't think it would be right for him to play qualifying.
No.
I think based on how it's gone this year, you'd assume that he would get a wild card. I mean, the US Open is not famous for being the toughest wild card to earn. It tends to go on box office value, fan favourites. That tends to be who they look to give the wild cards to. I mean, Venus Williams, for example, she's had multiple wild cards for singles whilst also not really competing actively on the tour. Stan was in Cancun at a challenger just last week. And it just shows you he's really committed to his love of the game. He's playing week in, week out where he can, and he doesn't really mind if it's a Grand Slam level or not. So I think this is a real blow because he's turning up. He's doing not just a farewell tour. He is actually playing and he's actually winning matches. He's dropped down a level to win matches, so he's still competitive. And he had a great run in Australia. So I really don't like this. And if you look at who they've given to, in comparable wildcards to in the past, I mean, Andy Murray got a wildcard in 2020. He hadn't played since the previous November when he came back to play the US Open that year. So, I mean, you either go for box office for the name or you go for someone with form or someone who is, a local player, an American. And I feel like Stan ticks that box much better than a player that, no offense to him, but no American fan is going to watch Patrick Kypson. They're not. That's not what that wild card is for. And it's not like he's, an 18-year-old up and comer. So I think it's in really poor taste. I do not like it. And I think, Monfils only got a wild card because it was the French reciprocal wild card. So people are drawing comparisons about his ranking. He knew he had that a long time ago. That would have been done and dusted. That was not given out by the USTA in that way. It was the FFT that then it was handed out as part of the announcements of the US Open wildcard. So quite questionable, I would say. And I think a lot of fans are quite appalled by this. So, Veronica, I'm with you on this. I really don't think it's right.
I mean, just to suggest something, put something out there. He's the 2016 US Open champion. And in golf, you actually get access to playing the majors if you've won it previously. It's like an easy way
physical,
out,
isn't it? Though tennis, then the year is 2054 and Venus is still playing.
I get that there should probably be a time limit, but do you think there is an argument maybe to say that if you are a former champion, there maybe could be a spot for you in the draw for the next, I don't know, 3 years? I'm not saying like golf when it's like forever, because that does feel a bit ridiculous. But I feel like that could have changed the conversation and maybe the discourse around the USTA.
It's tough to police, I think. You'd like to think that they would give them, especially in the final year on tour, for someone who is playing. I mean, if you look at his ranking, he's 125th in the world. He was 9 spots away from the cut. So it's not like he isn't at the level he needs to be at. And I think if you put in that rule, it would actually do more harm than good. Because a lot of players who've done a lot of years on the tour, I would want them to be able to get a wild card, but they haven't won a Grand Slam or won that Grand Slam, because then Wimbledon on that logic might not feel obligated to give him one. So you end up with all these rules. It's very physical tennis. But Kim, you've been rather silent on this one. You're a bit of a Stan fan, aren't you?
Well,
we're not going to see Stan shorts.
I know one final slam. He
Stan shorts in New York.
Yeah. What year would they have been? 2015. I mean, clearly that's the era of tennis I'm still living in. So in my mind, Stan won, was winning this tournament. But
Stan won it last year. Yeah.
I did actually see Patrick Kypson play a bit at Wimbledon. He was up against Mackenzie McDonald on like court 11 in the first round.
He did win that match, didn't he, Kim?
I watched half of the first set.
And you weren't impressed. You left in outrage.
Yeah, he didn't, enthrall me enough to stay and watch all of it. So
US Open fans, you're in for a treat.
I mean, I'd love Kypson to prove us wrong. I'd love him to get a good draw and go on a bit of a run.
It's not his fault, is it? We've got to remember that.
No, it's not his fault. And I don't want him to get any, hatred or anything.
But you would have thought with, we're going to come on to it, that the amount that it costs to get in to the US Open, that they would want as many names as possible to provide the value, provide the memories. To think that they could have done a whole thing around Stan Wawrinka in his last Grand Slam, and they're almost robbing the fans of that. Fans who paid very good money. It feels again like a very big missed opportunity.
You don't have to put him on a big court. Put him in the draw, though.
Yeah. I think if he was American, sure, he's getting one, because obviously Venus is getting one. Kennan's got a wild card. Sloane Stephens.
If you say anything about Sloane Stephens, Kim,
I'm not suggesting that
I will come
get
for
one.
you.
Here we go. Gloves are off.
Former champion.
Absolutely. I mean, shall we talk about the US Open ticket prices? I'm sure Veronica wouldn't mind, because it does kind of follow on from this while we're on the US Open. The costs of all the tickets, they've gone a bit sort of World Cup esque, haven't they? $363 for a day one grounds pass on Ticketmaster, which is the official ticketing site. A seat on Louis Armstrong Stadium, $466. I mean, these are prices that are for the elite. These are not everyday, regular tennis fan prices. I mean, you can go to Wimbledon on a grounds pass for what, 30 quid? How can the US Open justify these prices?
People are going to
Chris?
pay them. I think that's the issue. I went a few years ago um, before kind of the massive hike in prices, and you have to be aware that if you want to go and you want to go last minute, you have to pay top dollar. Unfortunately, I don't like it. I think it's probably the thing that might make Joel agree that he quite likes the Wimbledon queue, because fans can get in to watch tennis. And I think that's what's missing from so many of these events, is that fans can't. They're either outpriced from it, or the ballot doesn't mean they can get in, or you don't get a slot in the queue to buy tickets like for Roland Garros. So it's getting harder and harder to find a way in. And I think this just means that it becomes a very elite thing to get in. I think you're always going to have elitism in tennis and sport. You can't really always avoid it, but you can do things that make it genuinely a fan experience. And these prices are on the official resale. So that's also what I think is the problem, is that the US Open is part of this. And
they're allowing fans to sell them on,
I mean, Wimbledon
ridiculous
would
prices.
never, because what happens is you have to sell it back to Wimbledon, or you don't buy it, you return it, and then it's resold. And even that principle I like more, or the ticket resale at Wimbledon means that you can get a ground pass and you can still get onto a big court. So I think it's outrageous. And I think the cost of the drinks will also make Joel's blood boil. The fact that the price has doubled pretty much to have a honey juice on site, Joel.
I think the honey juice, though, honey juice has, I think the price of it has, I think it's the same actually as last year. I was like, oh, thank goodness the honey juice
when you do
has
pay
$600
for a ticket.
It's still remarkably expensive. I mean, the thing I don't like about it is also, I've been reading kind of comments from fans, and it's like, you're almost like not good enough for, the main event. And it's like, I'll go to the fan week instead. And it's like, they're almost like, oh, I can go to the fan week, but I can't enjoy any of the, the singles main draw action, and it doesn't feel very inclusive. And I think you're right, Chris, in the sense that I think resale for the US Open has got out of control. These aren't the prices, of course, set by the USTA, but it's nice to know that, with Wimbledon, for example, that they have rules in place that means you can get in as a fan, you can experience those moments, even if you don't have the deepest pockets. And I worry what this means for the future of the event, and how this Grand Slam is portrayed versus the other ones. I mean, Wimbledon, run by the All England Club with the LTA. It's all about kind of growing the game. It's hard to have that narrative as a kind of national governing body when you're charging these prices. You can understand why the players want more money, and see it more as a commercial venture when these ticket prices are being promoted in the news.
Yeah, they're being sold on Ticketmaster. So just for clarity, that's an official partner of the US Open.
Yeah, so they're making a cut of that.
It will be definitely something where there will be money coming back to them in some form. Also, they can control that. We've seen, artists in music control the resale and some of the prices of things and dynamic pricing. Olivia Dean took a stand. I'm sure that the US Open could take an even bigger stand if they need to. But I think that point you've made, Joel, really does stick out to me, because I don't like the fact they're saying, you don't have enough money to come to the main tournament because you're not going to spend enough money there. And if we have high prices, then those people might be more big spenders when they're there. So I think all of it isn't
net worth.
Right. I don't like that side of stuff, and it's giving the influencer effect rather than the fan effect, and it's always going to happen. But I think the US Open can do more to stop this from getting completely out of hand.
But is this also because they have announced for the second year in a row a 20% increase in the prize fund for the players? So is part of all this to fund this increase, because they have announced that the singles winners, they're now going to be getting $5.5 million.
That sounds good, doesn't it?
First round prize money's gone up to $140,000. So these are all 20%, increases, which is a massive. I mean, imagine if we all got 20% increases in pay 2 years on the trot. We'd be loving life. But it's a big increase. They're really leading the way, and I guess is part of that as well, because they just don't want these player protests that we've had, players against sort of the media over the prize money. I mean, what did you make of the news out of the US Open in terms of the prize money? Is this a sustainable thing? They can't keep offering 20% increases year on year, can they?
Well, they've led the way so often when it comes to things progressing in the sport. So it's not a surprise to me that they're the first ones to make the move here, which is why it's disappointing that on the fan side of things, they're really letting fans down, because they're looking after the interests of some very highly paid tennis professionals. And we don't want that to be, the optics are that's at the expense of, the fans. So I think in terms of what they're looking for, the players, they'll be very happy with this. In terms of another part of this is a council will be set up as well for the Grand Slams, another council. But it feels like...
How many councils are there in
tennis?
I'm
getting confused.
Are we on a council? Should we be on a council?
Podcast council.
But I mean, there are things that are happening that will keep the players happy. And I think you've got to keep the fans happy as well. So I think it's bad timing that they announced this kind of in poor taste, the record prize money, whilst also, scamming your fans, unfortunately, for tickets.
It does make Wimbledon look a budget option, and at £13.50 for a Pims, I didn't think I'd be saying
well, you can get a meal deal for a very reasonable price
with a nice tote bag.
With a nice tote bag,
yeah. Well, we'll have to see how it all pans out. I mean, we'll be doing our US Open preview later in the week, so do come back for that later on in a few days' time, because the draw is out on Thursday. So more US Open to come for sure. And the mixed doubles is obviously happening over the next few days as well. So a lot happening. But we've got a bit of other news to catch up on. Many listeners will have heard, it was all over the mainstream media in the UK and probably globally. Nick Kyrgios has tested positive for cocaine in a drugs test earlier in the year. It was in Mallorca. He failed the drugs test when he was there in July, playing in the doubles. I mean, when I heard this, I have to say I wasn't massively surprised. Obviously, he's not really been on the tour for a while. Yeah, I just kind of thought, oh, yeah, makes sense. But yeah, Joel, I'll come to you first. Is there hope for him after this?
Yeah, I'm always I think with these situations, we don't know like the full facts at the moment, but I think what we don't I think the thing that is really important is we need to understand if it's if it was taken in competition or if it was taken outside of competition, because if it was in competition, his suspension could be, I think, up to 4 years, but if it was proven to be out of competition, it could genuinely be like 3 months. So I think there's a lot of there's still a lot of mileage to go with this story, but it still did shock me. I think with Kyrgios, we've seen this season, he's built any sort of momentum on the tour. I think he's played 4 matches, 4 defeats. He's not been in a good mindset. I think the thing I take from it, to be honest, is actually in a more positive story. The way he owned up to it on social media, I think, was quite refreshing. I sort of appreciate a little bit how he admitted fault. And, it sounds like, he's going to take the punishment on the chin. But I do think there's more to unfold here before, we can understand if it is going to impact his career, if it is going to make him think about whether calling tennis, because he is 31 years old. The longer a suspension will be, no doubt, the more doubt will come into his mind.
Ooh, see, that's where I don't love what he wrote, because it is a bit of a sob
Do you think
story.
it was PR 101?
I think there's some people have been involved in advising him, but I think he can't help himself but try and say, I'm not going to make excuses, but then he goes on to list all the trouble that he's had physically and mentally. Yeah. And you think, I'd much rather he said and was open about whether it was in competition or not in competition, and said, look, I've been relying too heavily on, drugs and alcohol or wherever it may be, because of, at the moment, I'm not feeling great about things. And I think a lot of people would have thought that was a lot more honest. I think because of the way it's phrased, it makes it seem like it's out of competition, which makes me think actually we could find out it was during the tournament. This did also, a similar thing happened where he was seen well, we don't know what happened in this one, but he was partying at the Australian Open, and that was documented that he basically got kicked out of a club. So it doesn't look like he's taking the nature of before and in competition necessarily that seriously. And I just think it's one where he said a lot about, the fact he's never tested positive. He's actually never said he hasn't taken anything, and I think there's something interesting about like, I've never failed a drugs test. So people who say like, oh, this wasn't performance enhancing. Well, no, he dined out on the fact that he'd never failed a drugs test. I mean, he tweeted about it. He's been such an advocate. And I actually think it's one of the very few things that I've had some commonality and opinion on is that his stance on doping. And he's one of the few players who calls out things that I personally think, even if his opinion isn't exactly right, I do think it's good to have that conversation around Jannik Sinner, around Iga Swiatek. But he's lost not really had any credibility. He's lost that a long time ago, I'd say. But with this, the idea of him now wanting to have a seat at the table and saying about being a role model and all of this for the kids, I'm just like, this is all nonsense when you think about it. Like, he's done a bad thing. He needs to own up to it, and it needs to be point blank. I've let everyone down, having been so, hardcore. Even saying it hurts him more because of the fact he was so hardcore on his stance when it came to their test. So,
do you think we'll see him back on the tour?
No, probably not. I don't know why he would come back at this point because, I mean, he's not competitive. He's not physically at the level he needs to be. I can't
see him getting the wild cards he got from any tournament now, really.
Maybe he'll play the Battle of the Sexes.
This is kind of affecting his commentating or any sort of media duties. This isn't a good look. Neither was his domestic violence.
He's admitted to that as well, and he got all those extra chances. So how many more chances can he be given?
Yeah, you can't excuse it like, oh, he's a character, la la la.
He's a name.
Yeah.
And I have been a bit annoyed by all of the talk of like, people have a soft spot for him because of his talent, and I'm like, well, it doesn't work like that, And I think that's something where I've seen a lot of male pundits in particular have been talking about this, and I think you don't have to say it's extra sad because of the fact he was a great junior. People do bad things, and you have to take it on face value. He's admitted this, that he failed it, and it looks like he's given a slight explanation to it. So you just have to take it at what he said at this point, and just think at least he's trying to get better, which is the inference in this.
I mean, just one final note. He isn't obviously the first player to have had a cocaine.
Is this a part of a quiz? How many can we name?
Couldn't it? Dan Evans. I mean, Martina Hingis did it back in the day.
Gasquet was a good one.
So,
that was in a nightclub.
We're not trying to excuse it, but it's...
And that was through someone else, wasn't it?
It was through a kiss, he claimed. Yeah. Indeed, yeah.
Oh dear. Right. Well, on that note, let's go back to the tennis, I think. I'll be getting a bit sordid here. Winston-Salem, we've got Daniil Medvedev headlining that one.
Yes.
This is the biggest 250 draw I've ever seen in my life.
Huge draw before the US Open.
Is this needed, is my question. It's a lot of people.
It's a Monterrey 500 in another country in Mexico needed.
Yeah, that's on the WTA Monterrey. Alexandra and Mertens are the top two seeds.
Well, if it's windy, Clara's there, so that could go well for her.
Yeah. Well, will one of these players, coming through these draws, go on to do great things at the US Open? Possibly. We'll have to see. It's sometimes you can get a few tips for your predictions from who does well at these events. But we do, of course, have the mixed doubles at the US Open starting. I mean, who do we think is winning this?
Who cares? Who does it matter?
Do we care? We didn't care. Well, is it going to be?
We like the fact the doubles players won last year,
Iran,
and now it seems like they're sort of being blocked again. I think they're currently having to.
I am excited for the top seeds of Siniakova and Patton. Oh wait, sorry, the top seeds in the qualifying for the mixed doubles. How on earth does that work?
I think they got a wild card for the qualifying, which confused me even more. So whatever I didn't understand about the format last year, I'm even less sure about this year. I think there are some pairs that we can get on board with, but it is an exhibition. I mean, Svitolina versus Monfils, I think that's fun. Gems Live, hope they win the title. Versus, sorry, they're playing together. God, imagine.
I was going to say, has something gone wrong in the
there
marriage?
There are some fun pairs. I mean, Alcaraz and Serena. I mean, views on that one. Is this as blockbuster as it sounds?
Do you know, I thought it was interesting. You've spoken before about how you've noticed on the court, in the doubles court, and we saw in Cincinnati, arguably as well. I think a lot rides on her partner.
She's got a good one this time.
At Queens, at Queens, and Boca was so good in that partnership, and I wonder, a returning Alcaraz, how useful of an asset is that going to be for Serena Williams? I don't think he's the greatest doubles player. I think it's just going to be fun to see them on the tennis
Two singles
court.
players. Will she be the boss of that partnership? Will she be telling him what to do, do you think? She'll have to, because she knows so much more about playing mixed doubles and doubles than he does.
She's been on the court more recently.
Also, she's won a lot more Grand Slams. I'd listen to Serena Williams, that's for sure.
Yeah.
She can sort of mum him a bit.
Mum him, goodness.
Mother him.
Yeah, she is mother in many respects. But who is winning this is the big question.
I'm going to go for...
Or should we do semis? Maybe, actually, that's quite fun. Do you want to give us your semis predictions, Kim?
I'm going to go for Tiafoe Fernandez, Navarro and Paul. Does that work? Oh no, hang on. That could be a final. No, sorry. Irani Vavasori, Navarro and Paul, Fernandez Tiafoe, and Zverev Townsend. No, can I change to Bencic Caboli?
I think you said every name under the sun.
I think you said everyone there on the list, Kim.
And who's going to win it then?
I think Irani Vavasori is going to defend.
I quite like that. Who are they going to beat in the final, did we say? You said for 14.
I'll say they're going to beat Bencic Caboli.
Okay. I'm not sure. Did you land on those? I don't know. Joel?
I'm going to say Svitolina Monfils. Let's go for it. Williams Alcaraz semi-final in the top half. I have some sort of faith. I'm going to say Anisimova Tien versus Irani Vavasori in
didn't even see them in this draw.
Semi-final. Anisimova is going to break out the Red Bull as well en route to the semis. But I'm going to have a final of I'm going to say Anisimova and Tien versus Svitolina Monfils.
Anisimova, famously a great doubles player.
Yeah, and I'm going to say my champions are... Let's just go with Gem's Life. Gem's Life for the win.
Oh, I do like that. I'd love to see that. Nice. That would be nice. And it's shorter format, isn't it? So they've got a bit more of a chance.
Yeah.
I'm going to go for Djokovic and Sabalenka making a semi. I think Sabalenka, remember, former #1 in doubles. She's going to get her confidence back with the GOAT, and they're good friends. And I think Townsend Zverev could be very formidable with that serve. That's one semi.
Okay.
I think the upset of the tournament is that Andreeva and Rublev are going to take out Irani and Vavasori. You know, both of them have won medals at the Olympics. Yeah. And I need to pick someone else to make that. It's a tough section. I'm going to go for a qualifier. It's going to come through. We don't know who they are, but they're making the semis. And then my final is going to be Rublev Andreeva versus... I'm going to go...
Jokolenka.
And I think, unfortunately... No, I'm going to say Jokolenka win. Just going to do it. This is where it turns around for her.
I mean, this has made us talk about the qualifying for mixed doubles, hasn't it? Which we wouldn't.
We don't know who's in the qualifying, though. We're very confused.
Well, normally
Does it matter?
Qualifying, to be fair. Yeah. No, exactly. Well, let's see what happens. We can wrap it all up on Thursday because we've got our US Open draw reaction and full preview for this year's edition of the US Open, including our quarter-by-quarter predictions. Well, that'll be fun and games.
Yeah, Kim, you've got to give one name.
Yeah, you've got
for
big...
the quarters.
Yeah. Is it Noskova
Which Americans will I go for? Yeah. Oh, will it be Nakashima?
Or will someone else get the prophecy?
Only Tarvitz was in the draw.
Yes.
Yes. Unlucky.
Yes.
Patrick Kypson.
We will be doing our US Open draw reaction episode on Thursday. As Kim mentioned, we will be doing quarter-by-quarter predictions. Collector set will be back as well. And our daily coverage for the US Open starts on Sunday. That is right. Tennis Weekly will be doing daily episodes across the fortnight plus one day, because it does start on Sunday. We'll also have our wrap-up episode as well. So lots and lots of content to look forward to. But we're going to wrap up our latest tour catch up here at Tennis Weekly HQ. We hope you've enjoyed the ride with us. Remember to subscribe so you don't miss a moment of action from the ATP and WTA tours, including Flushing Meadow and the US Open. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and all your favorite podcasting platforms out there.
And if you love what you're hearing, then be sure to leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube.
And keep your eyes peeled for our subscription service that will be launching this week. And stay connected with us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, and X. The handle for all of those is Tennis Weekly Pod. And I mean, you can email us. The mailbag, I think, is closed for a little bit now. But if you'd like to, it's tennisweeklypod@gmail.com. And it will be back in full force after the US Open.
And we'll be back on Thursday for our US Open draw reaction. One definitely not to miss. I'm already curious to see what Kim's predictions are after that the Noskova prediction at Wimbledon. Yeah, we'll have to see. But until then, it's goodbye from Kim.
Goodbye.
It's goodbye from Chris.
Goodbye.
And it's goodbye from me. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time on Tennis Weekly.